Like only 3 people got the internship. And funnily, it was me, my twin sister, and another person.
Stressful situations, pressure situations, day-to-day scenario when you're already working there? How do you manage that stress?
Like watching these videos, and these are like fun videos to watch. So it's not even like studying as such. Run it on your own and just see that answer coming, and then you can go and look into the specific code.
Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode of the podcast series Hustle to Heights by We Are Placed. यहाँ हम डिस्कस करते हैं एक्सपीरियंस लोगों की करियर जर्नीज, उनके सक्सेस पाने का तरीका और उनके चैलेंजेस। इससे पहले कि मैं आपको अपने आज के गेस्ट से इंट्रोड्यूस करूं, मैं रेकमेंड करूंगा कि आप हमारे यूट्यूब और इंस्टाग्राम चैनल्स को फॉलो करें, क्योंकि हम यहाँ पे पूरे पॉडकास्ट के छोटे छोटे क्लिप्स डालते हैं जो आपको बाइट साइज लर्निंग प्रोवाइड कर सकता है। आज की हमारी गेस्ट हैं ट्रिशा गंगाधर। उन्होंने अपनी जर्नी बैंगलोर के एक छोटे से टाउन से शुरू करी। ट्रिशा ने गोल्डमैन सैक्स से लेके अपनी ड्रीम कंपनी एप्पल तक का सफर तय किया है। इस एपिसोड में हम डिस्कस करेंगे उनके करियर ट्रांजिशंस, उनके बोल्ड डिसीजंस और कैसे उन्होंने हाई प्रेशर एनवायरनमेंट्स में अपने लिए जगह बनाई। ये एपिसोड स्पेशली उन लोगों के लिए बहुत यूजफुल रहेगा जो बिग टेक में अपना करियर बनाना चाहते हैं। तो आइए शुरू करते हैं ये एपिसोड और सुनते हैं ट्रिशा से। हाय त्रिशा, वेलकम टू हसल टू हाइट्स. This podcast is about giving actionable insights to job seekers, students, candidates who are preparing for any kind of career roles. So, let's start with a brief overview about your career journey, starting from maybe college or even school life, how it shaped what you're doing today.
Yeah. So I come from a very small town in Karnataka called Dharwad. And growing up, my older sister she's 6 years older than me, and she took engineering. So that was kind of my only role model to follow. And then I was very confused between either going to engineering or law. And then it so happened that in the year that I gave my exams, there were a lot of paper leaks, and then a lot of exams got postponed. So I could not really give my law exams, so I only ended up giving my engineering exams, and that's the only path I could choose. And I did my engineering in Dharwad itself in a college called STMCT. And after I got my bachelor's, I got the first real exposure to tech industry was through an internship at Goldman Sachs. When I interned at Goldman Sachs, that's when I met a lot of people who intentionally chose engineering and just didn't fall into that path. And I got exposed to different paths you can do, different streams you can work in. And that's when I decided that okay, I do like being in tech. And I also got a full-time offer from Goldman Sachs, so I joined back as a full-time employee. I worked there for 4 years, which was really a very good exposure, and plus also a lot of crucial projects that I worked on and have helped me in my career to go forward and to really understand what I work into. And then after Goldman Sachs gave me this offer to move to the US to work in their Manhattan office. And but it would be on a visa where I would be restricted to one company. And also COVID was happening at the same time, so there were a lot of embassy closures. So it was not easy to take that path. So that's when I decided that. And my I have another thing is that I have a twin sister who's also in tech. So she had already come to the US for her masters, and she really wanted me to come. So I chose the master's path. Moved to the US on an F1 visa to pursue my master's at the University of Utah. And once I did my master's, I got a few internship offers during my master's, and I also got an internship at my dream company, which was Apple. And then I interned at Apple, and then I'm now a full time software engineer at Apple.
Okay. So, quite a journey, and like both in like all the time inspired by sisters. I see that interesting. That's interesting. I first read that you have a twin sister, and then you were saying that you have a 6-year-old sister. I thought,
Yeah, so
how
we're three
that?
sisters,
Yeah,
and we're all
interesting.
engineers.
Great. So, I mean, let's maybe like first we can just discuss what you're currently doing. Maybe give a
Yeah.
brief about what your role is at Apple, what is the day to day like not going into very much technical detail, but just so that we know what kind of a work you're doing, so that we can maybe ask questions around that as well.
Yeah. So I worked with a couple of teams at Apple, majorly being in the Apple Pay organization. So everything to do with how you pay on your app, or like when you add something to your wallet, what happens? I'm mostly a backend engineer, so I've written like services for those things, like for those things to work out. And I've also worked on the App Store team. So the App Store engineering team, where I mostly worked on pipelines, where when an app was submitted to the app store, how it kind of, what are the things you do before it kind of goes live on app store, and then features around that and metrics around that. Yeah, again, I cannot go into a lot of detail, but whatever this shows up on app stores, the recommendations that show on app store, and like what all happens before that's made possible, I worked on those pipelines. And now again, I'm back into an Apple Pay team. So I'm mostly working on Apple Pay on the server side, where you develop services for new things. That like there's something called tap to, like pay via cash, pay via iMessage, tap to provision, things like that. So I'm working on the services on those for those features.
Okay. So, now going back to your childhood at, like as you said, you are from a small town in Karnataka. So, how would you say that that was like? Obviously, one of the factors to choose engineering was like your sister was already doing engineering and you could not prepare for the law exams, or you did not give the law exams. But
Mhm.
like as a child, would you say there was any inclination towards computer science or uh, tech in general? How was that like, especially in a small town in India where at that time probably tech has not even reached that stage where it is right now, and like it was not that prevalent. So how was that like?
Yeah, so even though it's a small town, we do have a lot of engineering colleges, and there's also like a new II, the new one of the new IITs is in Dharwad. So there was tech, and there was like I know a lot of people travel to Dharwad to do these tuitions for engineering exams. So I did have some exposure to it, and I did know like these are the different paths. I mainly wanted to go into laws because both my parents are professors, and they're both professors of journalism. So I was more exposed to journalism and law and those kind of fields where you're more, and I'm also a more vocal person who likes to be in like, who likes to talk and who's more extroverted. So I thought those roles would suit me. uh, my sister would, she was an electronics and communications engineer. She did really well in her job in the early way. She got to travel a lot, she visited all these countries. So I was like, okay, that's something you get to do with like a tech job. And I also, that was my first time when my parents worked like 6 days a week, I think, because colleges do work on Saturday as well. But my sister's job was only 5 days a week, and she got Saturday and Sunday off. So that was like, okay, I want to be in a job where I can only work 5 days a week, also travel, and get to meet all these and that was also, she also worked with a lot of international people. So that was also something very interesting to me, that you get to speak to people from different countries, and then you get to travel, meet with them, and learn about different cultures. It was not really in terms of, okay, I need to understand tech, or I was good at coding, or I like to code, or I did coding projects. I was never inclined that way, at least till I reached the undergraduate level.
Interesting. So, like talking about college now, like once you reach the college and like till college, you said that there's no, specific inclination as such towards coding, that like there were other factors rather than, being attracted towards code or being able to create something. So
Yeah.
how did college change that, if it ever did, or like what was your experience with college? And like in general, what do you feel like college, now that you have also studied abroad, like in a master's you've done from the US, what would you say was different in India, and how would you, like, did it actually shape your career journey in the college? Was it actually helpful for you here, or like how did that work out for you?
Yeah, so when I joined college, I joined in the EC branch because that's like the top branch based on like your rank. But in the first year, you take a coding class, you take like the C class, and there I really got interested because I you could code something and that you could develop a game. Like I think we were given assignments where you develop games and stuff like that. So then I really understood what CS was, because I did not have a CS course in my 8th and ninth and 10th. So I only got introduced to it in during my undergrad. So then I did like it. I was like we I That's why I switched my branch in the second year. And then I decided that, okay, I want to pursue CS, because I also realized that everybody is ultimately going to do a CS job where you have to code, and other branches are just more like learning about it, but ultimately you need to code to kind of get something done. So I kind of switched my branch. And there we had this thing that every year we did like a fourth year project where you had to build something from scratch, like a full app and things like that, with like a team of four. So that's also when I was really into, like, I researched a lot about what like a full project should be. There were a lot of other people doing different projects, and they were uh, so that's when I was like really into, okay, yeah, I do understand it, I do want to be in this field. I think that definitely changed my perspective about CS. And a good and in the US it's completely different. Everything is based on projects. It's not really, you don't do a theory class. Even though you do a theory class, you're not going to give a theory exam. It's mostly something that you learn, and then you have to solve all the questions, and your exams are completely new. Most of the exams are like open book exams, because there's nothing in the book that could really help unless you've understood the concept. So when I came to the US, I did a lot of NLP ML courses, which have helped in my like in my in the team that I was, the Appster team, that was like an ML team. So there knowledge that I learned from school really helped me in that team. So in when I did my masters, I really understood that like what like how each of the and because I did my masters after having some work experience, it also made me understand how each of these is applied in the industry. Because when you're learning in undergrad, you don't have any experience, you don't know how things, like a concept that you learn is being applied in the industry. When I did my masters, because I had that experience, I was able to easily correlate like how this concept or how this algorithm could be applied at a bigger scale. So I think it's really important to kind of have an experience either through internships or, yeah, going out working a full-time job before you pursue higher studies. Because
Mhm.
otherwise I feel like you're not taking full advantage of what you're studying if you don't have that industry experience.
Yeah. So, again, going back to college, undergrad specifically, you said that you switched to computer science in your second year and you started doing projects. So, what would you say, like, for anyone who's going to college right now, any degree, whatever they're doing, but what are some actionable steps that they can take right from, let's say, the first year of college or, you know, general younger years of college to make it so that they are able to get an internship somewhere or after college at least land a job somewhere nice. So what are some actionable steps that they can take in college apart from their regular curriculum?
I got my internship through like the college placement. It was like a day one, and it was new that Goldman Sachs was even coming to our school. It was like the first time they'd come. But I think what I realized, which I realized after meeting people at Goldman Sachs, how they got their internships, is just reaching out to, like, sending cold emails or sending. Now you have LinkedIn, and now so much of it is on the internet. You don't really need to. It's not that gatekept anymore. You can go and look up people's profiles. You can, if you know you want to work for Google or if you want to work for Apple, you can go search on LinkedIn who works for Apple. You can even find out who the who the recruiting team is, and then you can just go mail them, tell them what you want to specifically work on. I think that really helps. If you Even if, because Google, Meta, Apple, or any big tech company, they have so many products. You just don't want to be generic and say I want to work for Google. You want to say, like, I like this product or I like this feature and I really want to contribute to it. Things like that, making it more specific and just reaching out to people, applying to a bunch of things. I think a lot of people don't do that because they just feel that, okay, how will I get it out of, like, so many people in India or so many people in the US? How will I even end up doing it? But that's really not the case. You never know when your luck comes through. So just apply. Like, even in the US, I think people apply to like 300 to 400 jobs when they're looking for internships, and then they end up getting 4 or 5, and they probably get interviews for like 15. So the ratio is very low when it comes to applying versus what you get. So don't be afraid, start applying very soon. I think a lot of people now do internships abroad, even from India. So in your third year you can move to and look for university opportunities. I feel like a lot of universities are hiring interns for doing, even though they're not really a tech, like a tech department, but they still need somebody to build like some coding portion of it. So if you know any basic coding language, like Java, Python, I think if you learn Python, a lot of projects happen in Python. So if you just reach out to universities and see if they have open positions listed, they will also fund your visa, and they will move for that summer, and you can work there. And that really shows up well when you come to fourth year and looking for placements. If you have experience somewhere, it definitely sets you apart from the rest of them who just have college experience and don't have any professional industry experience. So just apply to a bunch of things. Even like if you're not able to find anything, just go around, like in your city itself there must be people who are looking for coders to do small projects, and just going there and working on like an app or building something so you have something to put on your resume really helps. I think that's what people. I didn't do that a lot when I was in undergrad. I only, like, my first internship was at Goldman Sachs, and it was very overwhelming because it was my first time getting introduced, working on a team and things like that. But if you do it in smaller sections in your second year and third year, it will really help you when it comes to your fourth year placements.
Yeah. So what was your internship at Goldman Sachs like? What did you work on, and like how did you crack the interview, etc.? Like even though it was a college placement for the internship as well, how did you crack the interview? There must have been competition, right?
Yeah, there. So the Goldman Sachs, I think, because it was day one, everybody was eligible to kind of sit for the placement. So everybody sat. There were like I think 600, and all branches. Goldman Sachs did not have a bar on which branch. So like all 600 students stand. And after the first round, there were 200. No, maybe less. 200 students left, and after finally the internship was only three people got the internship. And funnily, it was me, my twin sister, and another person who got the internship. So three of us got the internship. So it was very I think Goldman Sachs and a lot of fintech companies, they look for something more than just coding, like clearing your coding interview. I don't They asked me very basic questions. The first round was, yeah, like aptitude kind of a test. The second round was solve a basic bunch of coding tests, and they do ask you like what have you learned, and I told them I learned Java this semester. Like it was just like I learned more about the oops concepts, and they asked me about the oops concepts. So it was like whatever you have learned, they just test you on that. It's not like they were very. And then they do make you solve some aptitude kind of questions just to think your logical reasoning and stuff. But they look for, I think fintech companies especially, I don't know if tech companies do that so much, but fintech companies or these bigger companies do look for your verbal skills. How good are you able to communicate? And even if you don't know the answer, how do you kind of tackle that question and still end up saying something? You don't say things like, oh, I don't know, or you have an answer, or you have a way of presenting yourself even when you don't know something. That really matters. So be prepared for it. There's so much available online. Do mock interviews, because even though we know that okay, this is how I should introduce myself, if you have not practiced it with someone, when you get that question and when you're in that high intensity environment in an interview, you end up like fumbling. And if you fumble at like basic questions which are expected in any interview, that shows that you're not well prepared. So at least practice. It's not easy to know what question you're going to be asked, but you know some basic questions that you might be asked. So be very well prepared for those questions. Then you get that and when you ask those questions, you get that confidence because you've answered the first five questions correctly. And then even if a tougher question comes, you're still able to kind of manage because you've answered the first few questions correctly. So keep that in mind and practice all the questions that you see online. And there's so much there's also like Lead Code has a discussion forum, Glassdoor has a discussion forum, just Geeks for Geeks has a discussion forum, and people do write their interview experiences. So definitely go through that. If you know you're going to sit for a particular company, go through their interview experiences. 50% of the time at least you're asked the same questions, so you can be prepared in time before you even ask that question.
Yeah. So I think like I already mentioned, we are building a tools like for this purpose itself,
Mhm.
and I'll share and get your feedback on it after. Maybe like I'll share an email with you and I'll get your feedback on our tool as well. So what
Mhm.
we are also trying to do is, because everything like now is AI is at that stage where we are able to use it in at a very good level. So our interview is basically completely AI based, which is a dynamic interview. So everything that, let's say, it starts with a normal question about uh, explain your academic background, and then whenever you answer, like the next follow up is very dynamic based on whatever you have answered and things from your CV. So I think that like what we are building is very helpful in the specific things that you are saying that you have to prepare. Like it's not about knowing the answer, it's more about how you structure your answers
Yeah.
and having a framework in mind as well. So I'll
Right.
maybe share that, and I can get your feedback on our tool as well after this.
Yes, of course.
So so then after after your internship at Goldman Sachs, you worked there full time as well, and you got a fast track promotion. So what was that like, and how would someone like once they are in an internship, what are like actionable insights there to actually secure the job, get a placement offer? What are like what was it for, like you for personally, and
Mhm.
then maybe insights on how someone can achieve that.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs, obviously, I don't know if you know about it, but it's a very high, intense work environment. There's a lot of pressure. I don't know if things have changed now, but there's a lot of pressure
They
to
have
kind of
not. I have
perform.
some friends in there. They have
Okay,
not
yeah.
changed.
Okay, but it's also, I did not hate it because I was a workaholic then. Maybe I would hate it now if I go back there, but I did like it. My internship was working like 12 to 14 hours, but I did not hate it at all because I we were so I my internship, it was like there were two people supposed to work on my project, but one person, due to like a family emergency or something, he had to leave. So but we still had to deliver. So Goldman Sachs does not make you work on projects that are not going to be used. They make you work on projects that customers are looking for. Like it's an actual project, so you're working with actual engineers, so there is a deadline to deliver it. There is presentations that happen to showcase your work, and you have to write production ready code because that code is going to go live. Most other companies kind of make you work on smaller projects maybe that are not that important, so that you have somebody can refine your code once you leave your internship. But Goldman Sachs is not like that, so that's why it kind of adds that pressure as well. I think what worked for me, even though I did not know the technologies that we were like, I was building the app on. It was at that time, it was like all, I think it was Angular JS that I had to build like a web app in, and I had to write like REST services and things like that. So it was very new to me. But what worked is I kind of, when I was given a task, I asked a lot of questions. I got to know like what task needs to be done, and I kind of did my own thing, and then I did not wait. So what we usually do is we wait for 2 3 days because we're stuck on something, and then after 3 days we kind of go and report it that okay, now I'm still stuck on it, or I don't know how to do it. I did not do that. I used to always do my homework like that. I would take that one day to do my task. If I don't figure it out, I would just go to my buddy. You're always assigned a buddy during your internship, and I would tell him that these are the things I've tried, these are the things I googled, and then this is, I still don't understand this, or this how to do it. And he always gave me like either a, I mean, everybody wants to help you. Nobody wants you to be stuck. They just probably don't have the time. So he at least gave me like some resource that I should refer to, or he gave me an example from a previous project that I could refer, and that kind of made things easier. So I was very interested in learning as well, like what is happening. And I kind of assumed that okay, I'm not going to get a return offer back because everybody that I interned with was like from a very good IIT and stuff like that. They already knew most of the things they were doing. So people already knew the technology that we're working on because they probably had friends who had interned at Goldman Sachs and they told them about it. So I was assuming that okay, I'm not gonna get a return offer back, but I was still like, I want to learn. At least this will help me in like my future wherever I go. So I kind of really made sure that 2 months I used all of it. I worked all the time, and I got a return offer. Nobody, it was not like my manager like during internships. We're not looking for, oh, how much do you know this technology, or how much can you solve, or how fast do you do it. It's mostly about how well do you integrate with the team. Are you able to ask questions? Are you able to build a rapport with people in the team, and then work and like talk about your work, and like just unblock yourself, things like that. They're mostly looking for those basic skills. They don't care so much about which language you learn, because when you come back, you're not probably going to work on that project, and it's not going to be that same language. So it's more about showing that willingness to work. and most people want to hire you because they've invested in you during an internship. So if you kind of just show that determination, that you do like you do understand what the company stands for, you do like working there, you do understand, like you do have a working relationship with the team members, I think that is very important during an internship, to kind of establish that, to take initiative, kind of set up. I think one actionable thing that you can do is definitely, even if you're working with just 3 people in the team for that project on your internship, but there are 10 other people in the team, make sure you set up meetings with each of them and try to understand what work they do, so that you just understand, have a better picture of the entire team, and don't keep it limited to the people that you assigned. That kind of shows that you take initiative, you want to understand what other people are doing, you want to understand what the goal of the team ultimately is, and that can act very well in your thing. And another thing that my manager specifically asked me to do is, at the end of each week, just write an email either to your manager or to your buddy, that these are the things, like it had sections like what was the task assigned, what was the learning, and what was like what I accomplished, or what and what are the blockers. So it had these 4 sections, and it could be like a very simple email that, okay, I just worked on my presentation today, and I spoke to these people. I think it also had a section on who you spoke to, or it was one of the things you achieved. So I would always write that email every Friday before I left, so that I have that for myself also to speak about when I'm at the end of the internship, and also other people know what you're working on. So it's very important, maybe not so much during an internship, but especially when you're working in like in a full-time job, it's very important to keep your manager informed on what you're doing, because that ultimately he's the one who's advocating for you.
Mm. It makes sense to like the things that you said. So basically, about like even in tech jobs, it's more important about soft skills in a way. How do you communicate? How do you structure yourself, and like maybe just get to know the team, etc. So after this, you were basically offered a L1 visa to work at Goldman Sachs in the US.
Mhm.
So and you did not decide to do that. You already maybe explained a bit, but like how did that decision like how do you take a decision like that? It's a big decision, and how do you factor in your long term career goals? Do you like you know figure out it from a financial perspective or a passion perspective? How would you go about taking big decisions in life?
I think when I had been for quite some time at Goldman Sachs at that time, and I think I'd learned everything I could learn, I was already looking to switch. I wanted some switch in my career because I had done well for myself there, and I had like I had good mentors, at people backing me. I used to speak directly to a lot of business teams, so I had a lot of leverage as well, and that's why they were happy to move me when I said that I want to change. But I think it from a financial perspective, it did not matter so much because I got a fully funded like a scholarship to do the like through TAs and RA ship to do my masters. So that was like financially it was not impacting me. Obviously, yeah, I would not be earning those 2 years, and if I just moved directly, I would be earning. But I wanted to change. I wanted to see what else is out there, and I felt like that was a good point for me, because if I had stayed any longer, then I would have become a manager. I would have started managing a team, and then at that point, it becomes very hard to kind of leave because you already have a team. You're now interviewing for managing roles, and you don't want to go to a managing role unless you've worked as like a developer in that particular company. So I thought that that was a good point for me to switch and see what else is out there. But I did not leave at like I kept my relationships at Goldman Sachs. So that's what I also told my managers at that time, that I would be willing to come back, but I want to go explore, do my masters. And once I'm done with my masters, I would be willing to come back. And they were also very happy with that. And they did. I also got an offer back when I finished my masters, and I reached out to my MD, and I did not actually have to interview. They just based on, I mean, they would have been some kind of basic interviews, but they did give me like a verbal offer based on based on, because I'd worked in the same team that I'd worked, and they were happy to have me back. But at that time I had another offer, and I wanted to kind of experiment and see work with a different company as well, so I did not choose that. But it was mostly just wanting a change and not being because if you're in fintech, you kind of the work is very different than what you do in tech now, even though you're in like a tech team, but the your goals are very different and the products you're working on are very different. and finance is always like kind of the main aspect of a fintech company, and not the technology is just like a tool to achieve that. So I wanted to go to a tech company and see if it's any different, if the culture is any different.
So, I, I wanted to ask this earlier and it slipped my mind. Have you worked at a small company, a startup, internship, like something like that? Have you ever done, or have you worked at big companies only?
No, I've only worked at two companies, two
Okay.
internships and two full times, and it's been Goldman Sachs and Apple. Yeah, I've not worked at small
I
companies.
wanted to ask the question that you said that it matters a lot around the tech, like soft skills, like managing, like asking your managers
Mhm.
feedback. And so, do you think that is there in big companies where basically because there are so many things happening, it's more important that you get to know what is happening, get to meet people and things like that, versus let's say small companies or startups where it is more focused towards getting the job done instead of working well in teams or whatever, etc. So like, do you have an opinion on this?
I think in small companies, in both companies, you have to get the job done. But in small companies, you're probably your higher up, because the company is small. There are not that many people working on a team. They already know, kind of have an idea of what part everybody is assigned, or what is like everybody's assigned like a big chunk of the work, because it is a small company and there are lesser people and there's a lot to get done. So you don't really have to be that vocal about your work because it's already known. In bigger companies, there's so many people in a team. Like even if you say like Apple Pay or something, just Apple Pay has about 3 or 4 thousand people. So it's you're working on like a small chunk of the work, and even though that's like a very important chunk, it's harder. And some managers are managing a lot of people as well, so it's very hard for them to kind of notice what you're doing. And being vocal also helps in, like, because I, like I said, I got a fast track promotion at Goldman Sachs. It was because I asked for it. I said that, okay, what should I do to get that promotion? What should, and I would have got on the normal track as well, which was one more year after. But because I asked for it, they told me that you can speak to these people, you can work on these projects, and then you'll be more visible and you'll be making more impact, and that's how you can get a faster promotion. I did that, and it was just because I asked. If somebody else would have asked and somebody else also worked on that part, they could have gotten that too. But I think we just don't ask a lot of times. Even moving to the US, I asked for it. I was like, I want to change. And they gave me these options that, okay, you can move to the New York office, you can do this, you can do that. Obviously, yes, you cannot ask without having some leverage first, without having working and like being important, like giving into the company, like giving, like doing well at the well for your team. But once you reach that, I think everybody does reach that after a couple of years. Definitely make sure you ask whenever you have like, well, people say network. Obviously networking helps in this sense, like you don't have to network with people very far out from your team. If you just speak to managers of sister teams, or like your skip manager, your skip manager, you can ask them for these things, that how do I become successful at this role, like how can I do more at this role, and things like that. I think that way being vocal makes sense, because they do, and everybody wants to give you advice, because they've also grown up in their career. So they will give you some advice like this, that okay, go speak to this person, or go ask for this kind of a project, and try to be in this role in this project, and that will help you. And then you can just follow that advice, and now that you've followed the advice, they also take some accountability in your career growth, and they do give you those opportunities if you ask for it. Yeah.
Mhm. So, coming to masters at the University of Utah, how did that change things for you, or like, how did you end up at Apple from there?
Yeah, so once I started my masters, I was really scared, because I was like, okay, now I've left a job and I'm back to school and I have to go through the whole thing again. And because I had some experience, I felt like mostly after masters or after college, they're looking to hire people who are very new or very early stage. I already had some experience, so I felt like maybe I was not fitting into the internship roles people were hiring for. So in the beginning, I think the first couple of months, I was really, and the assignments are really hard. I felt like at least I was, because I was going back to school, I was not used to like studying, or like having that discipline where you sit and like do your assignments, or you study or for an exam and things like that. So those, I found it very overwhelming in the first 2 months, because you have to apply for internships. The internship season starts like immediately. After you go, you need to start applying for internships. I had not done lead code in like a long time, because you don't really use lead code during your work thing. So I was like, I had no experience. I like had completely forgotten how you do, like how you like solve those kind of problems. And so that it was very overwhelming in the beginning. But but when I got the internship interviews, what helped me is talking about my experience, because I had some experience. I was like, when somebody would ask me a question, I would kind of segue into, okay, how my experience would help me solve this. And obviously I had to do some lead coding, and that's how you get your first clear your first few rounds. But then it did help me, like talking about my experience and like how I can kind of relate projects to what I've done in the past. Either you can use your industry experience, or you can use like your internship experience or your college experience, but you kind of have to relate to what they are trying to achieve, or like what that company stands for versus what you have done and what skills you can add. So I think that's where it helped me. uh in yeah, again, in like my year was like the COVID year. I got my master's in 2020, when all the internship, like everything was down, nobody was hiring in 2020, but the hiring really picked up in 2021. So I applied to like every single company, like Starbucks, or because everybody has like a software engineering role. So applied to like the Starbucks, the transit here, and things like that. Applied to every single thing. And initially, I did not get any interview call back. So I was like really disappointed. But it's just the timing of it. And once it happened, I got like a lot of callbacks at once. And then I got one internship, which was at this company. I think it's acquired by Cisco now, but it's basically Cisco now. So that company, and that I got once I got the internship, I had like, okay, I'm done. I have this confidence that I can have some internship. Now let me still keep doing to reach like the company I want to be at. And my dream company was actually Apple. And I had a friend. Apple does not, I think, does not hire that much. So it's very, I don't know, I don't have any other friends who work at Apple. So I knew a person at Goldman Sachs who, her sister worked at Apple. So I reached out to her, and then she referred me. And I think 4 or 5 months later I got a call. And yeah, obviously the interview was again. And by that time, because I had done some interviews and I had got a few other offers, I was kind of okay with like doing lead code at that point. And this was like 6 7 months later after starting my masters. So I did a couple of rounds of lead code. And even they, because it's an internship, I think internship is also again soft skills. They want to know how you speak about your work, or like how you articulate stuff. Obviously there's coding rounds, there's lead code rounds, but it also matters like how you kind of talk about what you're learning in college, and like how you relate to your subjects and stuff.
So anything at college that helped you specifically, college specifically, masters, did that help, uh, like courses or anything that you're doing there helped you in your career later?
Yeah, so in when I did my undergrad, I had not taken any. I'd done ML, one of the ML theory subjects, but I'd not really gotten into like building anything. But during my masters, I took a lot ML and NLP, and I built projects. Where like at the end of the course, there's always like a final project to build. So now and in my team, it did help me understanding how these models work, how the input is applied. There are some basic terminologies, like what K means is, I mean, you would have learned that in your undergrad as well, but how it's really applied to a project, how you can build, like take a data set and label it, and then how you can use that data set to kind of produce some results, things like that I only learned it during my masters. And also like newer things, and just going back to like the basics, because when you're working in an industry job, you're not writing a sorting algorithm yourself, you're not doing anything, like you're using mostly libraries. Uh, you don't go to the basics and understand how this algorithm actually works and why this is better in terms of time complexity versus some other sorting algorithm. You go and do that only during like your data structures class and stuff like that. So because I'd done that in my undergrad, then I went to the industry and saw how those algorithms were being used. And then I came back to, okay, understanding why something is chosen and what each library uses. That was kind of nice to see that, like how that happens, and get a different perspective. So college really helped me in understanding that. And I was very intentional with the courses I picked during college, because I knew what works for what is the ultimate job I'm going to do, what kind of internship I was looking for. So I only took courses that helped me with my internship. even though they were like difficult courses to take in the first semester, I took those because I knew that okay, these will count when it comes to my internship time. Like this is something I can speak about, versus taking, like I was not going to work in like a distributed systems kind of a role. I was not so I didn't take that course in the beginning, even though that's like a mandatory course. I took that in my last semester once I'd already figured out what my full-time job is going to be. So what your job you want, definitely take those courses in the beginning so that you can speak about it during your interviews.
Cool. So now that you are at Apple, which was your dream job, like how is that working out for you? Is it actually living the dream?
Yeah, of course, like you get the glitz and glam of all of it. Like you understand all the different products that happen at Apple and like all these different teams. So it's definitely great. It's definitely surreal sometimes to feel that okay, you do work at that company, but like I said, there are like thousands of people working, so you're a very very small part, and your feature is like a very very small part in the pipeline. So in that sense, you do feel that okay, fine. Even though I'm working on Apple Pay, there is so many different things that happen in just one transaction happening. So you just realize that okay, yeah, it's not like you don't build the whole thing. So that's very different than what you see from outside, like how big tech company looks. But you build, like even like I know friends who work in like on Instagram, but they work on like a tiny feature of Instagram. So even though they say they work on Instagram, it's just still not that easy to kind of relate to, because you're not working on the whole thing, you're working on like one feature of it. So that way it's a little let down in the beginning to understand that okay, no, I'm not working on the whole thing, or you're working on such a small part and there's so many people involved. But obviously you get to I think the best part about working at a big tech company is the people. There's so many people who have been there for so long, and they have built products from scratch. So I know I've met people who were there when the first iPhone was launched, when was first things were launched. And they tell you those stories and those experiences of how they made a lot of tech decisions, and understanding those things from within the company, that I think is a really great thing. Because when I was growing up, that was like happening and it was like such a big thing, and now you go and understand like the intricacies in each launch and what happens during each time. So that's I think the fun part.
And how is work-life balance for you now versus Goldman Sachs? Do you believe in work-life balance?
I think in India, I feel like I did not. And it really depends like what age you're at also. Like in that age, I was really like, I was workaholic. I loved working all the time. I worked even when like at Goldman Sachs, it was really like, it's up to you. The more you do, the more you're rewarded for it. But it's not like you have to do it. You can all obviously work the normal hours or the normal, take on normal things. It's not really forced upon you. But I liked it at that pace. I liked the fast pace. I still like the fast pace compared to the slower pace of work. So Goldman Sachs, obviously, I did not have good work-life balance. I've been on holidays where I've gotten these calls where I have to be on call because I was like an important part of some release that was happening, and only I could like know what that bug was or what that fix was. So that I hated it then when it happened on those days. But now that I look back, it's really nice to be kind of in that position where you have built something which you have a lot of knowledge about, and you kind of pass on that knowledge. You can mentor other people. You can, I think that's when you kind of can lead some tech discussions or design discussions, because you know so much about a process. So it's both good and bad. At Apple, I feel I have very good work life balance. It really depends on the team, but I have normal working hours. I do have a lot of time even on the weekdays to do other things. I obviously I'm not working on the weekends. It depends on like time to time based on like when where you are at the release cycle. If you're in closer to a launch, it gets more hectic. But in generally in the US, even though people say it's not as good as probably Europe, but the work life balance is definitely better than India, because people do things on the weekdays as well. They're not pushing everything to do everything to the weekends. So the work life balance is generally, yeah, good. I have not had complaints with it.
And like Goldman Sachs, even Apple, I think there are a lot of uh, they are companies which are working at such a high level. So I'm sure there are stressful situations, pressure situations. How do you manage that in a day-to-day scenario when you're already working there? How do you manage that stress?
Yeah, I think it gets hard, especially when you're working on something that's external, that's customer facing, because a small error or a small bug could lead to like something being in the news or something. That's not happened to me, but it does happen. So it gets stressful sometimes, and especially some timelines cannot be moved because there's a release that's like a worldwide release or something, and it cannot be moved. So I think in that times your manager really helps. You can go talk to your manager about like, okay, I'm very stressed, I don't think I can complete it, or I want to take on lesser work in terms of other projects because I'm already working, like I'm majorly focused on this. And I have not had, sometimes yes, managers have pushback that no, you have to do it, we don't have anybody else, and that times you do end up putting in extra hours, or you kind of have to manage it yourself. But 80% of the time your manager will find like a solution for it, or you can speak to, you can kind of break down your work into different chunks, and whatever is achievable to you, you can do that, and other there will be other people pulled into the project if something is not achievable. I think for what works for me is just breaking down every all of my work into like really small chunks, and then doing the easier parts first, and then kind of going into some the complicated business logic that you have to write sometimes. Because if you're just stuck on the difficult part, you've just lost a lot of time, and even the easy part kind of becomes difficult later because you just have like one day to do it now. So I kind of try to do all the skeletal stuff before, and then write the core business logic, and then modify your structure based on like if something has to change, but kind of get do the low hanging fruits first, and then get on to the main work.
Cool. Uh, yeah, so you've mentioned a lot about the importance of role models, mentors, having managers who are able to help you out, and like, talking to managers, like once you're in the job. Let's say, for example, someone in a tier 2, tier 3 city in India, like because they have access to LinkedIn and everything now, they can reach out to people. But like, how would you suggest, what kind of tips would you have on someone who has to reach out to, let's say, a random stranger and ask them to mentor them, or just get someone involved in your career journey? Do you think that's helpful, and how would someone go about doing that?
Yeah, I think making it personal is kind of important because everybody is very busy, and if you're just sending them, I do get a lot of messages, I do try to reply sometimes, and these are people who want to work at Apple, but it's just they want to work at Apple just because it's like a big company. They don't really know why they want to work at Apple, or they don't have a reason for specifically why they've reached out to me. I know it's kind of hard to find that as well, but trying to make it more personal, like try to reach out to someone who's in your probably college, or they have something similar to you, and then you kind of build the story that I also went to this college, but I work here, and I want to work, or I want to follow in your path. I want to, then what is like the advice you want to give me, or are you willing to mentor me? I'm not saying that people will say yes outrightly. You'll have to make a few tries. You'll have to reach out to a few people before that happens. But definitely making it personal helps because somebody is able to connect with you and they feel more in. And it's also about how qualified do I feel in mentoring someone who just reaches out to me, right? But if they tell me that, okay, they've gone to the same college as me, or they are looking to study at the same college as me, then I'm more of in a position to give them advice because I've gone through that path. Or if they tell me that, even if they tell me like Apple is their dream company, but why, or like why specifically Apple, or if they've already tried their hand at it, if they say like I already interviewed at Apple but I was not able to like clear it, can you help, since you work at Apple, can you help me now, or like what helped you, things like that. I think having some personal connection to the people that you're reaching out to kind of helps, because then even the other person feels a little more obliged to kind of respond to you or understand your story. So I think that helps. um, Recruiters, obviously it's very hard reaching out to recruiters because they get so many emails and they get so many messages. So recruiters, it's only kind of, if you're looking for a specific role, like if you see that this role is a complete match to me, I already have the skills, then reach out to the recruiter, list down your specific things and highlight some keywords. Because even recruiters are not completely into the technology, sometimes they know some keywords that they're looking for, so kind of highlight that so that they understand that and they don't have to read through like your resume or read a whole paragraph about you. So kind of being very specific as to what you're looking for, like being very specific as to, I'm looking for a female mentor in this who can guide me in this specific thing. is more helpful than just having sending a generic messages, because everybody is getting a ton of generic messages and we don't have, it's not about the time, it's just like you don't even know what your response is going to be. You can say generic things like, okay, yeah, go to the careers website and things like that, but if you want specific advice, I think, yeah, tailor your messages to that person.
Okay. And like, do you think people are open to this? Like now that you yourself have achieved a certain significance of, success, and like you are at a stage where you can also mentor people and, advise people. Do you openly do that? And maybe have you seen people do it? What do you think is from the other side? Like obviously from a candidate perspective or a job seeker perspective, I can reach out to people and there are people who are open to it. But do you feel like because you have done it from that perspective and now that you are at a stage where you can give back to people, do you actively seek that out, or is that something where if it comes I'll do, but not something that I'm actively doing?
For me personally, I actively seek out the new grads kind of group. We have Slack channels in our company, and I do look for people who are new and they reach out. Either like have sent a message as to they want somebody to mentor. I kind of reach out to them sometimes. I do sign up for things where you're like, do you want to mentor someone? I do always kind of sign up and I put in my specific things that I can mentor about these things, career roles, or like whatever, having a master's and things like that. When I have reached out to people, I've not reached out. It's very hard to find that specific person itself, because your role models may be like very, could be unreachable also sometimes. Like if you, like I aspire to have a role model who's like very high up, it's not easy to kind of send them a message as well. So I once reached out to a person again who's very high up because she leads like a big team, but I specifically told her that I'm looking for a woman mentor who has become a manager and who has a big team, because that's what I want to do. And I do, and she was very open to it. She told me, yeah, okay. And I was the kind of the first person who was first or second person who was asking her, because generally she was like, people ask me, but they ask very like generic questions. They don't ask you for mentorship specifically. So I asked her that, can I, and I even told her that what meant, and she kind of asked me, what do you mean by mentorship? Like, what are you expecting? And I gave her the expectations that I have, that I want to kind of meet with you every once every month, once every 2 months, and I want to discuss like my career options and how I should kind of communicate with my manager, how I should ask for certain things, because every company's culture is very different. I cannot apply something that I did at Goldman Sachs to Apple, or something I did at Apple to Google. So it's good to have some mentor in that company itself who has gone through that path, because they have done certain things. So you can ask them. So I asked her those specific things that I've seen. She also started at a lower position and then she's become this manager. So I specifically told her that I want someone who's gone through that path, because I also want to go through that path. And she was open to mentoring me. I do meet with her once a month, and people are obviously very busy, so the meetings keep getting moved. But whenever I have like this team where uh I had options from like two different teams that I could have chosen, and then I spoke to her and she kind of gave me good advice as to which team I should choose, because she knew some people in the team. Also, these people, because they have been in the company for so long, they do know a lot more people than you do. So if you're looking for a particular role, she also reached out to me when she had a role in her team where she asked me, are you interested? And I was not at that time, so I did tell her that no, I don't want to go into that role. So it's good that way, you get to hear about more opportunities. So I think people are willing. It really depends on who you ask, and if the person says no, it's not a big deal. You can just move on
Yeah.
and ask the next person.
Interesting. So, what is next for you personally? Are you looking to stay at Apple, and Apple gives out those blocks of decades, like you've spent 10 years, so you get a
Yeah,
receive a big block.
yeah.
So, are you looking
I'm
for
not.
that?
I'm not even close to receiving one. I've been only at Apple for 2.5 years. I think Apple does have a culture where people do stay back, because a product is kind of built like for a long time and then it goes live. So you want to see that too, how that process happens, and you want to wait till something goes live. I definitely think that I've not learned as much that again, Apple also is not as fast paced in terms of because they do have cycles, and it's not like, okay, everybody's doing everything. They're big teams, so you do small chunks in everything, so you learn about one aspect and then you move on to a new project, so you learn about a new aspect. So there's a lot of learning that happens. It's not like you can't learn as quickly, but you are like kind of, you kind of master one thing before you move to the other. So I feel like I still have a lot of things that I can learn at Apple, so I definitely see myself being there for a few years. And then, yeah, you never know with how the tech season is going. It really depends on what's kind of trending. I would love to go and try out like some AI ML roles. But again, even that space is very hard to break into as somebody who does not have a lot of experience, because there's so many people trying to. But I think the best way I'm thinking is I can try to use those technologies in my team in a smaller scale, and then kind of go into those teams by using this experience that I've done at a smaller scale.
Mm. So, like maybe not a career question, but a tech question. Now that AI is, like it's there a lot for various different things. How do you see that in your affecting your job, or like how do you see, you obviously understand machine learning, so you understand how AI works and where it is at today, what stage it is at. So how do you feel it will affect your job going forward?
I definitely see lesser people being hired to do the things that, like, now maybe what 100 people team will definitely probably become like a 50 people team soon, because so much of it can be automated. But for the big companies, have their systems are so integrated with each, like they're so well integrated with like so many different tools. It's not easy to like automate everything. It's not easy to like put a piece of code that automates things in somebody, like one piece of code, or like one automated engineer to work on so many different things. I don't see AI taking over that quickly as we had imagined probably 2 years ago. And the compute required for the AI models to work, and just it's not possible at this time to kind of, like, AI replacing Google would, like the Google search engine would require a lot of more compute. So that, I don't think it's at that scale. But definitely, like some of the jobs where you are probably using, somebody is doing a repetitive task of looking at it, could be replaced, but not at the, not so quickly, and not that everyone will lose their job. Maybe a less, I don't think people will lose jobs, but the tech jobs, and that's lesser people will just be hired, lesser roles will be put out, lesser hiring will happen, which is already happening, because one person can do probably more now because he has access to all of these AI tools. But I don't think software jobs are going away completely, at least not anytime soon.
Do you personally use AI actively in coding, or like?
I definitely use Chat GPT and things like that for mostly summarization. I don't think it does work well to summarize, like if, instead of like me making 3 4 Google searches or looking up Stack Overflow and things like that, now I can get all of that knowledge summarized in like one question or one prompt that I asked Chat GPT. But I feel like you do need to know what is the answer. Like you need to have some knowledge. You cannot blindly ask it to give you a piece of code, because then you don't know what it's saying is right or not. But if you already know what you want, and if you're just looking up for syntax, or if you're looking up for information that you already know but you don't exactly remember everything, it's a very good tool. So I think that helps me quickly to write, and especially if you're switching between languages. Like if I was coding, I'm mostly I've coded in Java, but I was now doing a whole project in Scala, and the concepts are kind of similar, but the syntax is very different. So I would definitely ask it, can you write me this loop in Scala and this, and that would give me code. And because I know the concept already, it's easy for me to tell, okay, this code looks good, looks correct or no, and then directly use that. So I think I do use, so it does make like your development process a little bit quicker than you. I think, yeah, that's how I've used it. But yeah, I'm not sure, like at the, I mean, and you're also limited when in like at least Apple, you cannot directly use so much of, like you cannot put in your business like you can't ask those questions. It's mostly like very generic questions.
I think I think one challenge would be that, like, because big enterprises won't adopt so quickly, and you can't, put up everything
Yeah.
on these platforms, so you will not get access. But I think now, like with what people are building using these tools, is very, like, it's crazy to see, even without knowing anything, how, like, even if I don't know a language, or even the it's not just about syntax. Even if I don't know the programming language at all, like even if I don't know concepts, even if I have an idea of what I want to build, I can now just, like, there are instances where people just code in English and,
Yeah.
just prompting it, like, make this change, make this change. Even kids now, like people like software engineers are
I think
teaching their kids to
with
use this.
kids, I feel like it's great that kids are using it so they get
Yeah.
exposed to all of it big in the beginning. But I feel like kids are kind of missing out on some of the concepts because I know people who just, yeah, because the assignment is build something and then they put it in ChatGPT, they get something, but they don't know what they've built and they don't know why it works sometimes. So unless you're using it in a way where you ask it to explain it to you and actually teach you, you will kind of miss out. But obviously, it's become so much easier to do those POC concepts instead of writing everything yourself and it taking it so much time. Now you can like bring up a POC very quickly because you have these tools at hand. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think specifically those roles are not going to be affected. Where, if, like, not roles, but people who know concepts and are conceptually clear about tech, I think those people are not going to get affected
And I think that
unintentionally.
in big tech companies there's a lot of domain knowledge also required,
Yeah,
and that cannot be it probably can be acquired by an AI as well, but it will take time
it'll
because
take
not everything is that well documented, or not everything is that easy for a machine to kind of learn. There's a lot of knowledge that comes by just being in a team or being in a company. So I think it will take time for sure to AI to completely get adopted in every role.
cool. So, coming back to career advice, and maybe we can end after a few questions. So,
Mhm.
do you have any resources? Like, would you recommend books or lectures or whatever for someone looking to, get into tech roles, even if it is like not non-formal education? Also, if you have something to recommend.
I think I could probably send you a few resources. There are a few resources. I think what's very important in tech is like just learning about different design patterns and things like that, like just a high level overview of how tech works, or how like these tools where you with some where there somebody explains how Instagram works or how Uber works or something like that, and just having that perspective how such a large scale company, if you see at the core of it, it would be simple pieces of code. So just understanding those high level things will be very important for you to, when you're in your interviews, or when you're going into like when you're telling someone why you want to work in tech, just having that idea of how like Facebook or Instagram or like these big Apple Pay or things like that work from an architecture perspective, even if you don't understand those technologies. So, and there are people now who have made videos of how the whole architecture works. And just watching those videos is really helpful and kind of amazes you how such large and even the scale at which they operate, because they'll tell you like what is their TPS, how many transactions they get, like how do they manage all of this, and how it's like how the load is balanced and things like that. Just understanding those, and these are very, you don't need to have like a tech background because they use very simple terms when they explain these things. So even if you're like early stages in your career, or if you're in college, just going through these videos will really help, like watching these videos, and these are like fun videos to watch, so it's not even like studying as such. So it's kind of nice to understand those things, and then you can be specific. Oh, this particular tool sounds very cool to me, or this particular piece in this architecture sounds very cool to me, so I want to work on that. Then and kind of then you can go and learn those specific technologies, or just using those videos. I think everything is on. I think my best source is YouTube. I kind of Google like whatever I want to learn, this plus YouTube, and then I see if somebody has explained that. It's easier to kind of take that information in as well, and do a lot of I think now if you Google, like there are a lot of starter projects. So if you want to build a chat bot, there'll be like a starter chat bot already built by someone who would have explained like in a medium resource or something. They would have explained like step by step what to do. Even if you're not understanding it, just download it, run it on your own, and just see that answer coming. And then you can go and look into the specific code, and then that kind of helps you to understand. Okay, this is how it was built, and it's not that difficult once you see that code and see something working. You realize that okay, even I can do this.
All right, I think let's do one last question. We have, I mean, the whole series is in advice, advice, advice only. But let's say one final advice to anyone, young student, job seeker who's just starting out their career journey. One final advice that you have to give.
I think what I would say is a lot of people get intimidated by tech, because even I was in the beginning, because people feel that you need to be coding all the time, or you need to have that passion for tech to be successful in tech, which is not exactly true. I do like my job, I do like doing stuff, but it's not like that I'm like doing projects or coding things all the time. Like after my job is done, I do other things. Like I have a very different life otherwise. So I think don't be intimidated if you're not somebody who likes tech but who's not so passionate that okay, every day I've built something. Like I remember in the beginning everybody used to tell me like I like the other people that I worked with, they're like, I do these IoT projects at home, so I've automated everything in my home. I've done and things, and when I would hear things like that, I would feel like okay, I don't do those things, so maybe I'm not cut out for this career in tech. That's definitely not true. You don't have to be obsessed about tech to kind of do well here. You obviously do like I said, I like watching all these architecture videos because then I can kind of amazes me, and that makes me kind of stay in tech because I'm like, okay, yeah, these big companies are doing such great things, but I'm not someone who will do that all the time or learn all the time. So don't be intimidated by it if you're not that person. Just try to see like watch these videos where they're like, what is the day life of a software engineer looks like, a day to day breakdown of what a life of like what work you do. And if you like that, then you'll do well in tech. You don't have to you don't have to work on tech all the time to be successful.
Awesome. So, all right, we'll end here. And thank you so much, Trisha, for joining us. Is it, now I'm asking this, but is it Trisha or Trisha? I
Trisha.
think, yeah.
I'm okay with both. Like I say
Okay.
Trisha, but my friends say it should actually be Trisha. So no, but I say Trisha. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining me. And
Thank you.
it was really great to know your career journey and very interesting to talk to you.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thanks for having me.
थैंक यू फॉर लिसनिंग टिल द वेरी एंड। मुझे उम्मीद है कि ट्रिशा की जर्नी से सभी लोग कुछ सीख पाए हैं और इंस्पिरेशन लेंगे। अगर आपको ट्रिशा से किसी भी तरीके का सवाल हो तो आप हमें ईमेल या लिंक्डइन पे मैसेज कर सकते हैं। इनफैक्ट आप ट्रिशा को भी लिंक्डइन पे फॉलो कर सकते हैं। ये सारे लिंक्स आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन में मिल जाएंगे और इस समय स्क्रीन पे भी डिस्प्ले हो रहे हैं। मिलते हैं अगले हफ्ते एक नए गेस्ट और एक नई जर्नी के साथ। थैंक यू।